as Week 10 looms in college football. Oh man, it's crunch time, baby. You got coaches coaching for their jobs. You've got teams fighting for anything. Maybe a future, maybe a playoff spot, maybe a bowl game. Everybody has their own goals. The College Football Playoff Committee got together Tuesday and they came up with their top 25. But more importantly, that sacred four, the four playoff positions that we get, well, for the past 10 years at least, but as we know, that changes come next year. As the 12-team playoff will arrive. But the sacred four, it's just the first week of that. There's many more weeks to come. There's a lot up ahead. But hey, it's all for entertainment purposes, right? That's all it is. Because really at this point, what do these rankings mean? Well, it's for somebody like me or somebody like you or for somebody like, people on the radio, people on the TV. It's just something for us to talk about as we get closer and closer to that point in the season. Like I said, Week 10, you got Michigan and their sign-stealing scandal that keeps getting hairier and hairier. New evidence continues to come out. The NCAA is probably going to have a multiple years long investigation into this, because it's the NCAA, and what else do you expect from them, right? But what Michigan, what they really hope doesn't happen is that the Big Ten does not get involved, because that's been some talk, and a lot of the other teams in the Big Ten, they're not having it, and they want something to be done now, not wait. We can't wait for however long, years and years, that the NCAA may take to get something done on that matter. No, we got to have something right now. We got to get some punishments in here, baby. What else is going on around the country? Well, I just know that we've got some great games this week. The SEC slate is packed. It is jam-packed, for that matter. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to run through the slate. Zach Ainsworth has sent me some of his thoughts, some of his picks on what he thinks is going to happen in these games. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I want to just run over this college football playoff ranking real quick and get that out of the way. Like I said, this is the first week that the rankings came out. They come out on Halloween. And by the way, I hope all of you listening, all of you watching, had a great Halloween. I hope you ate way too much candy. And maybe you don't have maybe you're not sick today. Or maybe by now, it's November 2nd tonight on a Thursday. Maybe if you did get sick, maybe you're better by this point. But like I said, we're live here. Brandon Taylor, Right Along Sports, right here on YouTube. Simulcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you find your favorite podcast. Google. There's several others. Stitcher, I think, was a podcasting platform that I think has went away, or at least was going away the last time I checked, to be replaced with something. But wherever you find us, whether that's on this live stream, whether that's after the fact, because these videos stay up in their entirety as they are on YouTube. You just go to the live tab, and if you enjoy what we're doing, hit a like and subscribe if you do want to see more from us. We're going to do this, and we're just going to keep on rolling throughout the season and beyond. There's always something to talk about, especially in college football, in sports in general, especially now with all the off-season stuff. You got spring practices. You've got, obviously, the transfer portal. recruiting and all that. There's always so much to talk about, and we're going to talk about it as much as we possibly can. But let's get back into these rankings. I'm going to go through the top 25. I'm going to slow down when I get to about, let's say when I get to 15, I'm going to slow down. We're going to run through these real quick, and we'll move on, and we'll focus on the top 4 here in just a moment. Number 25, you have Air Force. Number 24, Tulane. 23, Kansas State. 22, Oklahoma State. 21, Kansas. 20, USC. 19, UCLA. 18, Utah. 17, Tennessee. 16, Oregon State. 15, Notre Dame. 14, LSU. Now, I said I would stop at 15 now. Let's take a look at these in a little bit greater detail. You have Notre Dame here, which faced an Ohio State team several weeks ago that was really close. And, I give it to Ohio State, and we'll obviously get to them in just a moment here. But that's a great win for Ohio State because Notre Dame was ranked in the top 10 at that point in the season. But then Notre Dame loses to Louisville, and that really knocks them out of the picture, probably for good. I mean, that was a nail in the coffin that, probably wasn't expected by them, but we'll see where their season goes. Number 14, LSU, they're creeping back. They lost early in the season, at the beginning of the season, actually, to Miami. And then in that thriller versus Ole Miss, they lost again. But they're working their way back. Jaden Daniels is on fire. He's a great quarterback, and he has a lot of potential. And look for them to continue to make possibly some crazy things happen. They face Alabama this weekend. That is a game we're going to talk about last, and could shape up to be a very interesting game. And if you're LSU, you want to beat Alabama. If you're Alabama, this is the last roadblock really in your season. This is the last test before you ride off into the sunset. Let's move on further. You have 13 is Louisville, and at number 12 you got the Missouri Tigers, which have impressed me. They've came out of the woodworks. They've really stepped it up here as of late. I say as of late. I didn't expect them to be at the point where they are now. Obviously, their only loss. Who's their only loss to? That's right, LSU. You got it. Congratulations. 49-39, they lost to LSU earlier in the year. They beat Kentucky, which was their other contender in the East, at least at that point. And they've really surpassed Kentucky as the contender in the East behind Georgia. They'll have their test. That's the thing that we love so much about the SEC. Not that we're just kind of SEC homers, but we love the fact that it all plays itself out. As these SEC teams, they beat each other up all year long, and it all culminates at some point. These teams, such as LSU and Alabama, LSU may be out of the playoff picture. They most likely are with 2 losses. But if they beat Alabama, that'll shake things up. Missouri and Georgia, hey, that's a game that could shake things up as well. Georgia continues to have these tests. They'll have another test next week versus Ole Miss. You look at a team like Texas A&M, about to face the number 10 team that we'll get to here in just a moment. There's a lot of shakeup in the SEC. These teams, they beat up each other all season long, like I said, and it kind of settles itself. It all works itself out. That's what we have to remember about it. It all works itself out in the end. So you got Penn State at 11. They were 10 in the AP. And obviously from this point forward, it doesn't matter what the AP poll says. I don't know if it's still going to be released. Whether anybody cares about it, they shouldn't. But it's there for your reference, for funsies, right? So you got Ole Miss at 10. I think a deserving spot for them. They're a pretty good one-loss team. Their only loss being to the Alabama Crimson Tide. And they've got a bright future ahead of them. Now, Oklahoma, on the other hand, at number 9, they were on track to be the Big 12, to win the Big 12 and to more than likely go on to the playoff. They hit a slight roadblock, though, this past Saturday when they lost to Kansas. In Kansas, 38-33. The Kansas students tore the goalposts down, proceeded to carry them out of the stadium, and dump them into a local pond. That's what I'm talking about. That right there, that is what college football is all about. That's the spirit of the game right there, baby. We just beat a big top 10 team. Let's cause destruction and mayhem. You got to love it. You got to love it. Moving on, Oklahoma, they should win out, barring any other crazy game that they may find themselves in. They should win out. They beat Texas in the Red River rivalry. Not all hope is not lost for them, but they are knocked down a notch. So as we move forward, we got Alabama at number 8, and like I said a minute ago, Alabama is, or like I've been saying for weeks now, Alabama is in this position where they've got the one loss versus Texas, an out-of-conference loss. They still have a chance to win the West and go into the SEC championship game, where they can, either lose to Georgia and end up in a New Year's 6, or they beat Georgia and they go on to the playoff. That's how I see it. Where they are now, is there a point where possibly they lose that SEC championship game but still end up in the playoff? I don't know. There's still more games to be played. That's something we need to remember, folks. There's still games to be played. This is just the first playoff rankings. We're going into week 10. There's still a lot more football to be played. And you have Texas at number 7. Now, Texas, their only loss being to that Oklahoma team in the Red River rivalry. Now, obviously, you see what the committee did right here. They put Texas above Alabama at number 7 because of that head-to-head. Alabama lost that game, and Tuscaloosa is a great win for the Longhorns. But Texas wins that game, and they get that spot above Alabama. And going forward, the question is, does the committee continue to put Texas above Alabama if they both win out? Where does it go from here? Obviously, you have conference championships. It's going to make a whole lot of difference here. You got number 6, the first two out here. You got Oregon at 6 and Washington at number 5. This is expected. Oregon, I think, personally, is the best one-loss team in the country. Bo Nix is on fire. That offense is on fire. That team is pretty dang good. Some people may disagree on them being the best one-loss team in the country, but I think they are. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would agree with me on that. And then at number 5, the Washington Huskies. They're sitting at 8-0. Obviously, number 1 in the Pac-12. They've been dominant, other than a few games where it's been kind of close. They beat that great one-loss Oregon team. They cut it close a couple games this year, but I think Washington is great. I mean, I can see how the committee would leave them out over, say, Michigan or Florida State, but it's going to be something. If all these teams win out, And obviously, number 1 and number 3 will work themselves out. But let's just run over the top 4 real quick. You got Florida State at 4, Michigan at 3, Georgia 2, and Ohio State at number 1. Now, number 1 Ohio State and number 3 Michigan will play each other before the Big Ten championship game. That'll get sorted out. Now, we may have a deal like we did last year where one of the teams gets beat. It's their only loss, and they end up in the championship game anyway. They end up in the playoff anyway, I should say. And that's just kind of how that goes. Now, Zach and I had discussed this about Michigan. That is the playoff committee going to be leery of putting Michigan in that spot because of their controversy with the sign stealing and everything? And I heard a quote from the commissioner of the College Football Playoff Committee, where when he was asked basically about that, about putting Michigan in the playoff in their top 4 when they're in the middle of this scandal here, basically his quote was, "That's an NCAA issue, not a college football playoff issue." What do you folks think about that? It's an NCAA issue, not a college football playoff issue. That really doesn't make any sense to me, honestly. I don't know what he's trying to say there. They're obviously ignoring the scandal. And look, at this point, I guess how can you blame them, right? Now, the other thing that I would say is Michigan hasn't played anybody. They have not played anybody. We joked that their last 2 games, the teams that they played combined for 4 wins total. And if you just keep adding the wins of all the prior teams that they played this year, it's pretty laughable. Michigan, they're firing on all cylinders. They're a great team. They're undefeated, and they're just killing it out there. Look, at least for number 1 Ohio State, you can grant them that. Like that you actually have evidence that they can beat a top 10 team, or 2 top 10 teams for that matter. Now, Florida State at 4. The thing about Florida State, they have some good wins, and they started the season in the top 10, and they've been able to maintain that. So they were rewarded for that. They beat LSU when LSU was number 5 at the first game of the year, and they beat a Duke team that was 16, and I consider that a good win. And they've got a bright future ahead of them. So, the discussion that we had a week ago about which team, say every team was undefeated, every conference champion was undefeated, which conference would get left out? Well, that just got blew all out of the water, because we thought, given everything that we said, that Florida State might actually be that team. But since you got this issue in the Big 12 with Texas and with Oklahoma, how do you leave them out? Now it looks like they may leave out the Pac-12. I don't know, because I would believe that committee would put Big Ten teams, 2 Big Ten teams in the championship game. You got Ohio State at 1, Georgia at 2, Michigan at 3, Florida State at 4. Look, Georgia, I think the committee says that they want some more tests. They want to see what else Georgia can do. And I understand that. I do. They want to see what else the Bulldogs can do. They've got a test next weekend. They've obviously got a test this weekend against Missouri, but they've got a test next week against Ole Miss, and that'll really kind of prove, what they are, what they can do. And going forward, will they make it to number one? Yes. Yes, I have no doubt about that. And Ohio State at 1, I actually agree with that, at least at this point. They beat Penn State when Penn State was number 7. They beat Notre Dame when Notre Dame was 9. They've got 2 good wins, and I think that's the committee giving them credit for that. And that'll work itself out. But this thing about Michigan, they're blatantly ignoring this scandal, and that's interesting because I don't know. It's not in my recollection. I don't know if the committee has had to face an issue where there was whether it be a scandal or some kind of NCAA investigation involved in a team that was, high like Michigan, way up there. Good team, but I think, I don't know if they've been in this position before. But we'll see. It all continues to develop. And there's much more stuff that's going to come out. There's many more games to be played. And it's all just going to work itself out. And we're just going to we'll learn. And we'll figure it all out as we go. That's kind of how it is, right? But what we're going to do right here, I'm going to throw this up. And we're going to shift gears here. And we're going to talk about this slate. This slate right here in the SEC. And for those of you watching, here it is right here before your very eyes, the SEC slate for November 4th, 2023, Week 10. And as we read through these real quick, you've got Texas A&M traveling to Oxford to play the number 10 ranked Ole Miss Rebels. That is a 11 a.m. kick on ESPN. Next up, the University of Connecticut travels to Knoxville to play the number 17th ranked Tennessee Volunteers at 11 a.m. on the SEC Network. Moving on, Arkansas travels to Gainesville to play the Florida Gators at 11 a.m. on ESPN2. And then you've got Jacksonville State going to Columbia, South Carolina to play the Gamecocks at 11 a.m. That one is a ESPNU kick. And moving on to our 2:30 Central Time CBS, and I have to remind myself every week to remind you folks that these are Central Time zones, not Eastern Time zones. So 11 a.m. would be 12 Eastern, 2:30 would be 3:30 Eastern, so on and so forth. But you've got the 2:30 CBS game, number 12, Missouri, playing the number 2 ranked, that's kind of unusual, Georgia Bulldogs. So Missouri travels to Athens to play the Bulldogs. That's Missouri's test this year. That's Missouri's test. And Georgia, they're looking to just look. They've been in big games before. And this is unlike any other one. Like this is no different than any other game to them. Moving on now at 3 o'clock, you've got the Auburn Tigers playing the Vanderbilt Commodores in Nashville, Tennessee. And that is an SEC Network game. And then at 6:30 on the SEC Network, Kentucky travels to Starkville, Mississippi to play the Mississippi State Bulldogs. 6:30 SEC Network. And then the nightcap. CBS has got a doubleheader this weekend. And 6:45 p.m. Central Time. Pretty late kick, honestly. The number 14th ranked LSU Tigers travel to Tuscaloosa to play the number 8 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. That is the slate. And we're going to go through here one by one. I'll tell you what Zach has to say about these games. And we'll just go from there. So the first game that is up on our list today, let's see which one we're going to talk about here. We're going to start off hot. We're going to start off with that first game that you saw right there. And make sure I get it up here for you folks. That is Texas A&M going to Oxford, Mississippi to play the number 10 ranked Ole Miss Rebels. You know, this game is a, you know, we were talking about a minute ago at the beginning of the show, coaches like literally playing for their jobs. Jimbo Fisher is he's in the uncomfortable position, or actually I wouldn't even call it an uncomfortable position, because like, have you seen his buyout or the estimate of his buyout? But nevertheless, Jimbo, if he wants to keep coaching, he's got to win this game, because this would really bounce them back. They would become bowl eligible, and they would, they would manage to get a win or two rest of the year. They're 5-3, 3-2 in the conference now. Upcoming games is obviously Ole Miss, and then they have to play Mississippi State. They'll get a win against Abilene Christian before going to Baton Rouge to face the LSU Tigers. That is a tough last game for them. But basically, I mean, they have to. You expect them to probably beat Mississippi State and beat Abilene Christian, but that would be 7 wins. Yes, they would go to a bowl, but is that really going to make these fans happy? You know, they're paying Jimbo a load of cash. Let me tell you, a load of cash. And I think people are ready for a change. They're ready for some things to start happening. This will be a great win to kind of put him back in a spot that, would at least make his seat a little more comfortable, maybe cool his seat down a little bit. Not really throwing ice in his seat, but it would cool it a little bit. There's no doubt about that. Now, on the flip side, the Ole Miss Rebels, pretty hot. They're 7-1, 4-1 in the conference. They have a pretty good explosive offense. Now, at times this year, they haven't been able to put it all together. But certain games that they've looked pretty good, and they've had stars in those games. Whether that's Jackson Dart through the air or with his feet, or if that's Quinshon Judkins, if he is able to get into a rhythm. That's the key to this, folks. Can Quinshon Judkins get in a rhythm? Because I think in any game he's dangerous. But not just Quinshon Judkins. Ulysses Bentley. And through the air, if Jordan Watkins can manage to get out in the open, as well as the other slew of receivers that the Rebels have, they could have a good chance to win this game. For Texas A&M, Max Johnson is, I guess he's an average quarterback. He's not terrible. Really, I think that the problem comes back to coaching. And I know Jimbo is really slow to put blame on himself. He'd rather blame others. He'd rather blame the players. He'd rather blame the other coaches than he would himself. And that's really getting old. I really think that's getting old. I think the fan base is tired of that. And I don't blame you. I mean, I don't. The line is Ole Miss -3. The over-under is 53.5. You know, I think Ole Miss wins this game. I'm going to tell you what Zach thinks. He sent this to me here. And we'll read his description. Zach says, Ole Miss over A&M. Jimbo has never beaten Ole Miss since he's been at A&M. This is Ole Miss's last SEC home game. That is correct. The crowd is going to play a factor. It is an 11 a.m. kick, which, is subject to be iffy at times. Sometimes people come and kind of sleepy environment is the word that people use. Will it be a sleepy environment? They've had pretty good crowds in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium this year, and I expect another great crowd, a lot of people. And if they can get started and kind of shake this A&M team up, that would be especially early in the game, to really throw A&M off the rhythm. And so if Ole Miss can just jump ahead early and knock them out pretty quick, that's when the crowd's going to really be a factor. And Zach also says that Ole Miss's defense won't allow Texas A&M very many points. Now, he didn't give me a score prediction, but we're going to take the Rebels. I don't know. I'm going to pick this live here because I'm going to tell you, folks, I did not write down the exact scores for these games, but I'm going to say Ole Miss is going to get it done here pretty easily. Give me Ole Miss. Give me Ole Miss 38-20 in this ball game. Let me see here. Yeah, 38-20. They blow that spread out of the water, and Jimbo finds some kind of excuse. When the reporters ask him, well, what about those halftime adjustments? He's going to be like, oh, there's no adjustments. There's no adjustments. They just you gotta execute. Your players gotta execute. I don't think I do a very well Jimbo Fisher impression. I apologize for that, folks. But moving on here, Zach and I agree. Ole Miss over A&M in that game. Let's look ahead. Let's see what the next game on our list is here. That is Connecticut. Oh, boy, this is a big game here, boys and girls. Connecticut traveling to Knoxville, Tennessee to play the Volunteers. There's not much to say about this game, honestly. Really, Zach said, I kind of got a little giggle here. He said, there's no surprise here. I'm not spoiling anything. He says Tennessee over UConn. I mean, come on. That's exactly what he wrote. Tennessee over UConn. I mean, come on. And that's exactly right. What is the spread on this game? Because that's interesting. I'm always interested to see what the spreads on these games like this are, because that can be tricky. It's probably a huge spread if I can imagine. It is Tennessee minus 36. UConn's a pretty terrible team. It is still hard to cover a 36-point spread. Even in a game like this, Tennessee gets it done. They score 56. Connecticut scores... I think that... You know what? I'm going to give it to Tennessee. I think they do cover this spread. 56-17. And I only say 17 because Tennessee puts their four-string defense out there. Connecticut scores some late garbage touchdowns. So that's going to be that. UConn has had one win on the season. They're just going to try to get out of this game alive, and that's pretty much that. So moving on to the next game in our slate here, it is Arkansas and Florida. The Arkansas Razorbacks at 2-6 and with no wins in the conference travel to Gainesville, Florida, where they will play the 5-3 Florida Gators, which are 3-2 in the conference. I say this every week. I feel like I have to give us, I don't want to say credit, but because we predicted Florida would have a disastrous season, I feel like every week I have to come on here and say, well, they've really done really good. They've done better than we anticipated, so we'll give them that. And they honestly haven't looked terrible. Let me pull up the information for this game so I can relay it to you beautiful people. So, Graham Mertz hasn't been pretty bad. He's been pretty efficient quarterback. He's 195, 257, 2,127 yards, 14 touchdowns, only 2 picks. That's actually not that bad. And on the flip side, you've got KJ Jefferson, 143 of 219, 1,547 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. There's just not much else on that team, honestly. The rushing leader for Arkansas has 79 carries, 260 yards, and a touchdown. The receiving leader has 43 receptions, 520 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And we'll combo that. Montreal Johnson, for Florida, has had 94 carries, 520 yards, 4 touchdowns, an average of 5.5 yards per rushing attempt. The receiving leader for Florida, Ricky Pearsall, 50 receptions, 718 yards, 3 touchdowns. That is a 14.4 yard average yards per catch. The Razorbacks they got it tough right now. This game, look, I don't know what Vegas is doing on this game, but Arkansas should really thank them for not making this line uglier. It's Florida minus 4.5. Now, I know that Vegas doesn't care about the feelings of Arkansas. Now, I'm not saying that they do, because they're in the business of making money, baby. That's what it's all about. And they don't expect to lose either. And really, at the end of the day, even while some of us might win, we lose. We definitely lose more than we win. That's what gambling is all about, folks. That's why you should always do it responsibly. Well, what's old Zach's thoughts on this game? So, this is what he says. He's got Florida over Arkansas. It's in the swamp. Florida is a better team, and it's just going to be a sad day for the Hogs. It's a sad year for the Hogs, really. Sam Pittman, I don't think he'll get fired this year, although he might. His seat's gonna be hot. He's had multiple years to develop this team. He's had a quarterback that has regressed in KJ Jefferson, somebody that people praised early in the season, before the season even started, and he's not been that great. The team overall is just not. They're in an identity crisis. You had the ugly game with them and Mississippi State not that long ago. And we all know what happened in that ball game. Mississippi State managed to get the win 10-7. And that's just kind of how it goes. Actually, it was 7-3. I said 10-7. Oh man, I wish they scored that many points. So basically, Arkansas, there's teams that go through this struggle here every so often. And by teams, I mean the teams at the bottom part of the SEC. Somebody goes through this every so often. You've had State in this position. You've had Ole Miss in this position. I'm not talking about Vanderbilt, but you've had other teams that have been in a position where basically they win their non-conference games, or maybe they don't even win all their non-conference games, and they just have an ugly season now. If they get beat by Florida, if they lose to Auburn, if they lose to Missouri, and they beat FIU, I don't know. I don't know what you do if you're in charge of this program. If you're the athletic director for Arkansas, I don't know how you go forward. It's just ugly. It's sad. Like Zach said, it's sad. There's no really other nice way to put it. And for Florida, like I said, Florida, they're working their way back. They're looking pretty good. And I think they get it done. I agree with Zach. I don't see how you can put Arkansas over Florida in this game. How many points does Florida score? I don't think it's too terribly high of a scoring game. I think Florida wins 31 to let's say 31 to 21. Arkansas manages to score some points in this game, but it's not enough. And that's just how it goes. Sad, really. For all you Arkansas fans out there, I want to know what you feel. I want to know what your feelings are. Like, I care about you people. Like, we really do. Zach and I, we care about each and every one of you out there. We may poke fun at your team sometimes, but it's all in good fun. But I want to know what you feel. Honestly do. Tell me, if you're an Arkansas fan right now and you're dealing with this crisis, I know you're probably over it now. You're probably already over it. I know. I've been in that position before. All right. Mississippi State fan, let me know how you feel. I mean, what, Auburn fan? Hey, tell me how you feel. If you're a fan of any of these teams, let me know how you feel. And I know, like, the comments are going to be crazy. Because if there's a thing about fandom, emotion, and all things in between. And there's probably going to be some vulgar language. And look, I expect that. But that's how it goes. I say 31-21 Florida in that ball game. Let's move on forward. Let's not waste any more time on that. Oh boy, we got Jacksonville State traveling to Columbia, South Carolina to play the 2-6 South Carolina Gamecocks. This is the Battle of the Gamecocks. Woo! Yippee! I know you all love and look forward to seeing this game. South Carolina, that's another thing. South Carolina fans, tell me. Let us know what you feel. South Carolina goes over Jacksonville State. There's no way that we can really twist that. I do want to know what the spread is on this game. South Carolina 15.5. Interesting. Give me South Carolina. I'll do 35. I'll do 35-13. 35-13 South Carolina Gamecocks. South Carolina, they've lost. They played Florida close. That's what it was. They lost 30-17 to Texas A&M, 34-12 to Missouri. They lost 41-20 to Tennessee, and they played Florida really close, 41-39, but they just haven't been able to string together anything. They beat Mississippi State 37-30, but I mean that's like the toilet bowl and the urinal fighting, for I don't know what they'd be fighting for, but you get my drift, right? You get my drift, folks. But say 35-13. Let's move on to the next game here. The Missouri Tigers. Oh, we've reached this game here, boys and girls. Woo! Number 12, Missouri, goes to Athens, to Stanford Stadium. Ooh, I better say it right. Stanford Stadium. Zach's going to get mad at me for butchering that. The number 2 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. 2:30 Central Time kick. That'd be 3:30 in Georgia. That is Eastern Time, by the way. CBS game. Oh boy. Like I said, Missouri crept up And I never had too much faith in Tennessee in the East. I really didn't. Like, I wanted to see what they could do, and I never completely counted them out. But originally, I thought Kentucky was going to be a great contender. And then here comes the mighty Mizzou Tigers. And they have showed us what they can do. And right here, you've got a great game here. The number 12 team and the number 2 team. Look, I'm excited for Missouri fans. I really am. That fan base has really been, they've been looking for something like this. They've been yearning for something like this. They've really been hoping, please, just anything positive. Anything good. You know, Eli Drinkowitz was on the hot seat, right? He pulled himself right off of that. And I applaud him for that. They really turned it around. This game, though, it's tricky because we saw what happened when Kentucky tested Georgia. It looked like Kentucky didn't study for the test. Now you got Georgia minus 15 and a half. It's going to be a incredible environment, as most Georgia games are. Zach's, let's see, let me pull this up real quick. Here's what Zach has to say about this game. He's got Georgia over Missouri. Do you believe that? The biggest game of anyone on the Missouri team's life. They're not usually in huge games like this. Obviously, you've got a Missouri team that's ranked very high, that's knocking on the door of really making something happen. Kirby Smart and Georgia have played in big games before, and that's nothing new to them. It's same verse, really. Same verse, same as the first for the Georgia Bulldogs. But for Missouri, it's new territory. It's on the road, and Zach says here that the only way that he sees him winning is if Brady Cook has the game of his life, and that's true. Brady Cook is not a bad quarterback. He's really been pretty good, pretty efficient. I'll go ahead and give you Zach's score prediction because he did write it down. He says 41-17 Georgia. So they cover that spread pretty handily. Let's look at some of these stats real quick in this game. Like I said, Brady Cook from Missouri so far this year is 169 of 242, 2,259 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. Carson Beck for Georgia, 192 of 263, 2,462 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions on the year. Rushing the ball, Cody Schrader from Missouri is 140 carries, 807 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Now, if we look on the other sideline to the Georgia Bulldogs, rushing the ball, Dajon Edwards has 95 carries, 556 yards, and 8 touchdowns. The receiving leaders for this game for Missouri, Luther Burden III has 61 receptions, 905 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Looking over to the Georgia Bulldogs, and this is interesting here, Brock Bowers is the receiving leader. Do you believe that? Like, do you really believe that? He's had 41 receptions, 567 yards, 4 touchdowns. Of course, we all know that he's out with injury. He had that surgery. And I wonder if there is any update. I'm sure he's been doing well. I'm sure his recovery is doing well. You know, he had the surgery that was it. Who was it that had that surgery before? The tightrope surgery. And which basically can allow you to come back sooner. Tightrope surgery. Yes. Yeah, they said he'll miss several weeks, possibly 4 to 6. But he's in great health. He's very young, and it's very possible that he comes back sooner than that. I mean, obviously Georgia would love for him to do so. But there's one thing about Georgia, and I said this last week, that they're not a one-dimensional team. They're not a two-dimensional team. And we saw last week that Georgia, they really, it's crazy to say, but they don't really need Brock Bowers. He is a great, a great asset to the team. But they proved last week that they can win, and they can do all that they've done with Carson Beck at the helm that they did with Brock Bowers. They can do it without him. Obviously, moving forward, you want Brock Bowers, especially going forward to some of these big games that's up ahead, especially if, they get to the playoff. You're going to want your best player. You're going to want this great, one of the greatest football players of all time. I mean, come on now. There's no doubt. If we look back 10, 20 years from now, we're going to look back at Brock Bowers, tight end for the Georgia Bulldogs, and everything that he's done. And really that tells you where the tight end position is in this day and time. And, both in college and in the NFL with Travis Kelce, among others that aren't just a huge guy that lines up on the edge of the offensive line, that blocks most of the time, but that might get thrown in a route here once or twice. No, they're dual threat these days. Pass catchers. In this game, Missouri is. Are they able to do something here? Can they shake this thing up? Or will Georgia just continue on business as usual? It's going to be an interesting one to see. Can Carson Beck, continue his greatness and orchestrating this offense of spreading the ball around with Brock Bowers out? On the flip side, can Brady Cook for Missouri, can he get something done? Can he rally this team together? Can Eli Drinkwitz come up with a good game plan to maybe shake up the Georgia Bulldogs, and quiet that crowd early? It'd be interesting to see. 2:30 Central Time, 3:30 Eastern, CBS. Should be a great game. It says right here it's going to be 62 degrees. Will be a beautiful day for football here in the fall, in November. Let us know what you think about this game, because this is like major ramifications here. But like Zach had him 41-17. I'm going to say the Bulldogs get it done as well. What was that spread again? 15.5. $38-21 Bulldogs. They cover the spread, and they get it done. And they look ahead. They move forward to that, top 10 matchup versus the Ole Miss Rebels next Saturday. And that's that. Let's move on here. We've got the Auburn Tigers, 4-4 overall, 1-4 in the conference. Just had their first conference win last week. They go to Nashville, Tennessee to play the 2-7 Vanderbilt Commodores. If Vanderbilt wants to win this year, I'd highlighted at the beginning of the year before the season that if Vanderbilt wants to, they may not win very many games, especially in SEC play. But if they want to string together some wins, I thought there were several games that they could, play close, I should say. I don't know if they're going to win these games, but they can play these teams close. This is one of those games. Now, Hugh Freeze is He had his first conference win at Auburn, and he's kind of running off the high on that. They're really excited of where they are. They haven't really got it all together. Peyton Thorne, he's looked pretty bad. He did not look bad last week. He wasn't terrible. I think they're kind of sort of figuring it out a little bit. They've got a little bit of momentum behind them, but I don't think there's any surprise here. Zach wrote, it's Vandy. And Auburn wins over Vandy. The spread on this game, can you guess what it is? It's probably pretty high. The spread on this ball game is, 12.5. Interesting. So the spread is 12.5, and I think Auburn gets it done. They beat the Commodores 31 to 20. Hold on, let's see, 31-21. Yeah, I said it, 31-21. They do not cover the spread, but they beat the Commodores. Yep. But hey, a win's a win, even if it's over Vanderbilt, right? A win's a win in that one. I run through a couple stats on this game because I failed to do that just a second ago. Peyton Thorne is 100 of 156, 1,075 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And if we look on Vanderbilt's side, at quarterback, A.J. Swan is 1,209 yards, 11 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the year. There's really not much more to say. Auburn is still trying to figure everything out. Vanderbilt is just trying to continue to put the fires out every week. But 31-21, Auburn gets it done. Moving on, Kentucky, the 5-3 Kentucky Wildcats, 2-3 in the conference. They travel to Starkville, Mississippi, to play the Mississippi State Bulldogs, which are 4-4, 1-4 in the conference. Is Davis Wade Stadium going to be up in ruckus for this ball game? Are the cowbells going to be ringing? Are Mississippi State fans still in it? Zach Arnett, I give the guy credit. He got put in this position, tough position. I can't imagine getting put in this position with Mike Leach's passing. And it's tough because he's never coached before. He got thrown straight into there. No interim tag or anything. Just, hey, boy, you're the coach now. And he was the defensive coordinator. Now you are the head coach. You are the man. You are the leader of this team. There's a lot of burden, I can imagine. A lot of weight on somebody's shoulders. And look, Kentucky is probably going to get this win here. Zach says Kentucky over Mississippi State. And really, you don't need to explain much if you've seen Mississippi State play this year. That's true. They're in an identity crisis like Arkansas, but they've just managed to be just a little bit better. You've had an issue at quarterback, which is really hard. I don't think any of us would have predicted that they would have had an issue at quarterback like that, where they just can't get anything done. Will Rogers could not have, no production. And, of course, he got hurt. And this has been a mess down there in Starkville, but Kentucky gets it done. The spread on this game, just for your reference, is it's 4.5 Kentucky, minus 4.5. It's going to be a beautiful night, 66 degrees down in Starkville for the 6:30 Central Time kick. Let us know, you State fans out there, how are you feeling right now? What is your genuine feeling about this team? You've had these issues at quarterback, like I mentioned, and where do you go from here? Zach Arnett, what do you feel about him? How do you feel about him? Do you continue to give him a shot? Do you Who do you point the finger at? Who do you blame for all this? And this tough game here versus Kentucky, it's going to be possibly another ugly night down there in Starkville. And you hate to see that. Now, if Mississippi State could manage to get this win over Kentucky, that would be great. That would be a great momentum for them. They'd have 5 wins. And, I think for Mississippi State, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, the goal right now, if y'all make it to a bowl game, I think you'll be happy. A lot of people pick this team to be at the very bottom of the SEC. And thanks to Arkansas, they're the cushion. They're the buffer. If y'all can manage to get 2 more wins, how happy would you be? Kentucky gets it done in this game, though. I say 34-17. I say Mississippi State. Maybe they managed to score a couple touchdowns. 34-17. That's what I'm going with. And let's move on past that. Here we go, our big game, the biggest game of the SEC slate. I would say definitely bigger than that Missouri-Georgia game. It may be close. This may be a close first over that game, but you got the number 14th ranked LSU Tigers, 6-2, 4-1 in the conference, going to Tuscaloosa to play the number 8 team in the country, 7-1. They're undefeated in the conference. This should be a great ball game. And as you saw last year, LSU wins in Baton Rouge, double overtime. But this is a new season, a new year. It's in Tuscaloosa. Anything can happen, as we saw with Texas early in the year. But, we thought the same thing. A lot of people thought the same thing about Ole Miss, that they could go into Tuscaloosa and win, and they couldn't get it done. Now, this is an LSU team that, with Brian Kelly at the CEO position, you should say, he managed to bring this team to the SEC championship game. They won the West. They really outdid themselves. They overachieved, and I said that is a blessing and a curse at the same time, because Brian Kelly comes in his first year, they win the West. There's no building blocks. It's you go straight to the top. Now, anything less than that, is it a disappointment? It's a good question. Let's see what Zach has to say about this one. So Zach says, super, super close game. You can honestly see it going either way. But taking Saban in Tuscaloosa feels like a safe bet. I agree with him on that. I agree with him completely on that. Saban finds a way to win. He finds a way to win. And that's all that matters. There's a win column, and there's a lose column. You can win by 1 point, or you can win by 100 points. A win is a win. In Alabama, while they have played, close, they've played with fire at times. They usually get it done, and I expect them to this time as well. This is a 3-point game, -3 for Alabama on the spread. This is going to be a battle of 2 pretty good quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels is incredible. He's 163 of 223, 2,573 yards, 25 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Jalen Milroe for Alabama, 99 of 153, 1,617 yards, 5 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Rushing the ball, you got Logan Diggs carrying the ball 105 times, 611 yards, and 6 touchdowns, 5.8 average yards per carry. And Jace McClellan for Alabama has 122 carries, 569 yards, 4 touchdowns. Receiving the ball, Malik Neighbors for LSU has 56 receptions, 981 yards, 9 touchdowns on the year. for Alabama. Jermaine Burton has 23 receptions, 508 yards, 5 touchdowns, 22.1 average yards per catch. Alabama's offensive line is, they've showed some weakness in this season. They've allowed sacks. Can LSU's defense take advantage of that? Can LSU's defense step it up? And, they've kind of allowed a lot of points. Is the offense going to keep them in the game, or is the defense going to step up? I see Alabama being pretty balanced here. Maybe this is another slow start for the Crimson Tide. Maybe this is one of those, low-scoring games early. I don't know if this is going to be a high-scoring game. You've got a high-powered LSU offense and an Alabama offense that can be at times, but I think they get slowed down just a little bit here. I think people are expecting the Crimson Tide to put points all over LSU. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I say Nick Saban finds a way at home to get it done, and the Crimson Tide win. Man, this is really tough. Alabama gets the victory 31-27 over the LSU Tigers. That's what I say. That's what I say. This right here is going to make a big difference. If LSU, this just shakes everything up. If LSU gets this victory over the Crimson Tide, that shakes up everything. Obviously, Alabama, I think would still be pretty good for the West. You could have a tiebreaker situation, and obviously, if Ole Miss can find a way to win out, there would be like a 3-way tie. Nope. I'm wrong. My apologies. Yes, I'm correct. Yes, I just contradicted myself, folks. You just saw that live right here on YouTube. And on Spotify, because I don't edit these things. Look, raw, everything raw, straight into your ears, folks. But that's it, because LSU has the out-of-conference loss. Alabama has the out-of-conference loss. So if Alabama loses, they'll have one conference loss. LSU wins, they'll just have the one conference loss versus Ole Miss. But if Ole Miss manages to win out, they'll have the win over LSU, who beat Alabama, but they won't have the head-to-head versus Alabama because they lost to the Crimson Tide early in the season. That's really interesting there. I really don't know how it would work. I don't know if it's really as simple as we think it is, but look, there's a lot of football to be played. There's a lot there's a lot to go through from here. And look, it'd be interesting to see, going forward, what happens. But that right there is your slate. That is it for your Week 10 here in college football. As I try to stand here. What do you people think? What do y'all think of this slate here? Let me know. I think it's a pretty good slate. You have the full teams. We've pretty much got all the bye weeks out of the way. And right now we just got to play the games. That's all we got to do. Leave it up to these teams. That thing really about Michigan, though, is pretty interesting. And let's just take a look. Let's zip through before we leave you here tonight. And take a look around the country at some of the other games in the other conferences. Just for fun here. Let's take a look. Let's start in the... Well, let's see if I can pull them all up here. TCU at no. Week 10. Yes. See, you've already had some games to be played. Kansas State and Texas, at Texas, that could be interesting. Notre Dame and Clemson, my goodness. How about Clemson? I mean, what do you people think about Clemson? That is a train wreck of a program down there. And Dabo deserves every bit of it, honestly. What else do we have here? Arizona State, Utah, Florida State, Pittsburgh, Oklahoma, number 9 ranked Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, number 22. That's 2:30 Central Time on ABC. Could be a good game there. Rivalry in state. That one will be played at Boone Pickens Stadium in Stillwater. OU is favored by 6 points in that game. That could be a good one to watch. That could be something on your radar for this weekend. Let's see what else we have here. I don't really see anything else of too much interest. That's pretty much it, folks. You got number 5 Washington playing number 20 USC. That could be okay to watch. That is 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC, and that's pretty much it, folks. I mean, where do we go from here? Like I said, like we say every week, look, everything's going to sort itself out. We just got to take it a week at a time. And with these playoff predictions, you know, it like they said on the broadcast the other night, these rankings expire in a week. Next week, we'll be back here talking about what they did, what they said, if anything changed, what shakeup happened, and where we go from here. The Michigan thing, stay tuned, folks. The Michigan thing continues to get interesting. It is every week, every few days, it seems like it develops more and more as the time goes on. But, folks, that's about it for this episode of the Ride Along Sports live show right here on your device, wherever you are, however you may be listening to us, watching us. We enjoy your company. We enjoy that you take a little piece out of your day to watch us, to listen to us. I know that I love listening to podcasts. I'm always listening to podcasts. And you can find the audio versions of this every week on your favorite podcasting platform. And just stay tuned. Week 10 is here, and we've got so much more up ahead as the season progresses. And for Zach Ainsworth, my name is Brandon Taylor. We'll see you next week. Peace. Enjoy the week, folks. It's going to be another great one. See ya.